A warm welcome to all of you for this webinar. My name is Karthik. So I head the blockchain practice at Indium Software, and I have around 21 years of experience in the IT field, and I've been working in the blockchain field for the last 3 years, helping organizations build blockchain solutions and proof of concepts and minimum viable products. In this webinar today, so we will be looking at the non-crypto use cases in blockchain. And should you have any questions at any point of time, please do feel free to type in your questions in the box and I will get to it at an opportune time. Okay, so the agenda for today would look something like this. So first we'll look at what is blockchain and the surrounding technology on which blockchain is built, which is the digital ledger technology. And then we'll take a very brief look at the blockchain and how has been its journey and its uses in the crypto world. And then we'll move on to see what blockchain can do in the non-crypto side of the things. And then we'll wrap it up with an Q&A session at the end. I'll probably start off with basics about blockchain, and I'm sure most of you must have heard about what blockchain is in different forums and websites. So just to touch upon briefly, so a blockchain is a decentralized distributed ledger for recording transaction. Right? Now, typically, if you look at the conventional system of centralized databases, we know that data is pretty much stored in a single server or a cluster of servers, and which is being maintained by a single organization or a group of admins. And it is up to that organization or the group of admins to give authority to people or to select set of people to view or to edit and so on. On the other hand, blockchain is a decentralized distributed ledger which does not have any central authority. So the word distributed means that the data that is stored in the blockchain is available to all the people, all the participants on the network. And there is no central person controlling who should see what. These blocks of data are stored in a linear chain, right? And each block has the hash of the previous block, and that's how the link is maintained across the blockchain network. Coming specifically to the distributed ledger, so what does a distributed ledger consist of, or what is it made of? So if you look at the distributed ledger itself, it has a data model which primarily defines what kind of data gets into the block and what is the language of transaction that. So a language of transaction could be seen as let's say get or a set kind of a method in traditional database operations. The only difference in the blockchain is that once the data is written into the blockchain, there is no deletion or there's no modification of the already written data. The operation that's are available on a database would be a create, read, update, and delete. Whereas in a blockchain, you just have a create, right? So there's technically the deletion of data is not possible in a blockchain, right? And then there's a protocol which is used to basically maintain the blocks in the blockchain. There are a lot of protocols are in use today. They're commonly known as consensus algorithm, and there are various consensus algorithm which are developed and used by different blockchain networks. Some of the common consensus algorithms known today are the proof of work, proof of stake, proof of authority, proof of elapsed time, and so on. So moving on. So if there is any talk about cryptocurrencies, the first thing that comes to everybody's mind is Bitcoin. And rightly so, because Bitcoin is the first cryptocurrency in the world to be launched, and it was launched in 2009. and as of today, it's approximately priced at 5,200 US dollars. Right? And looking at the success of Bitcoins, there are, of course, the other uh, blockchain cryptos which evolved. Um, for example, Ethereum, Ripple are a few of the well-known cryptocurrencies that are available today in the market. And the table shows just a few top 5 or 6 currencies that are in use today, and how much are they trading for, and what are the trade volumes, and so on and so forth. So this is just to give an idea about what the cryptocurrency market is, and how things are happening in the cryptocurrency world. And here's a list of it's probably a subset of the entire list, but this gives a fair idea about the number of cryptocurrencies that are sprung up in the ever since blockchain has been popularized by Bitcoin. Right? And I'm not going to spend too much time on this. So I'm just going to move on, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the use cases which have been used by the cryptocurrencies in the blockchain space. Right. So let me start first with the P2P payment. So P2P payment is one of the biggest use cases, or the biggest use that cryptocurrency has seen, where the payment from one party to other party happens without the involvement of any middleman. Right. So it's in traditional banking system, if I would want to transfer a money to someone, I would need to log into a bank portal, or I would probably need to log into an application, and given my details, given the receiver's details, and then it's at the discretion of that central authority or the bank to effect that transfer. Whereas when you look at the blockchain cryptocurrency payment uh, mechanism, it is just a matter of transferring from one wallet to the other, and there is no central authority involved in it. That has been one of the uh, most common and most used use case of the crypto blockchain. The second one would be the crowdfunding. Crowdfunding also would probably, most of you would have known it as an ICO, which is the initial coin offering. So there have been a lot of ICOs that have been launched to raise money, and specifically, um, if you look at Ethereum blockchain network, has been very effective in creating something called ERC20 tokens, through which the ICOs have been able to raise money. Similarly, for crypto exchange, that's again one of the it's seen a very good application in the blockchain space, where uh, a user could come in and buy or sell one crypto for the other, so, or have a fiat currency like an USD or an pound, and buy Ether or Bitcoin, right? So buying Bitcoins by spending USD, or buying, let's say, Ether by giving Bitcoins, are facilitated by this crypto exchange platforms. There are, of course, other uses which have been uh, quite successful in the crypto world, especially when it comes to entertainment, music sharing, where the singers have gone ahead and used blockchain technology and the cryptocurrencies to launch special videos, and to reach it out directly to the fans and the other companies, the distributors, and so on. Right. So there are quite a few use cases which are there for yeah, for us to look at and see how they have actually made an impact when it comes to the cryptocurrencies. There is a real other world where blockchain can be of impact, and which is the non-crypto side of the blockchain, where you don't use any cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or Ethereum to create a blockchain network. So how does that work? So that's going to be the focus of the remaining session. Now, before even we kind of get into the non-crypto use cases, so it's really important to understand what are the different types of blockchain network that are available, and when does it make sense to go for which one. So let's probably take a look at some of the blockchain types. So there are three different types of blockchain, namely public, private, and consortium. So public blockchains are like open blockchains, where they also call permissionless blockchain, where anybody can join the network. So for example, if I wanted to get into the Bitcoin network, so all I need to do, I do not have to have any kind of a permission to join the Bitcoin network, as long as I have a Bitcoin node, and I can get connected to the Bitcoin network to see what's happening there. Right? And the minute I get connected to the Bitcoin network, the blocks get downloaded onto my node. So Bitcoin and Ethereum are examples of blockchain type where they have a native asset. So Bitcoin has Bitcoin and Ethereum has Ether. And of course, to add the blocks into the blockchain, the public blockchains, they kind of do a lot of computational work for getting the blocks added to the blockchain. Coming over to private blockchain is more of a permissioned one, where somebody needs to authorize end user to be able to participate in that network. And so in a big network, at any point of time, the participants are known participants, their identities are known, and they need not have a cryptocurrency associated with a private blockchain, right? Um, so it could be something like, if, for example, if you're building a blockchain to digitize documents, and that document to be available to all the participants in the network, it does not involve any kind of a cryptocurrency exchange, then doesn't require for a public blockchain to be implemented which uses Bitcoin or Ethereum. Right. So we'll probably look at more such examples later in this webinar. The third type of blockchain is a consortium blockchain, which is again there's a thin line of difference between private blockchain consortium and consortium blockchain. Now, consortium blockchain would be more like multiple organizations who have their own network, and if they want to participate in a single network to get a common work done, then they come together to form a consortium, and then that's how the consortium blockchain is kind of formed. To give an example, it would, if I were to open an account in bank A, I would need to submit a lot of documentation ranging from my identification to my salary and all the address stuff, right? So when I open an account with bank A, the bank A has all the information, and tomorrow if there's another bank which has come up in a place where I live, and I want to open an account, so what I would be doing is, in a traditional way, is to submit all those documents again to those banks. Right. Now, if there was a way by which all these banks were connected through a common network, and and they could share the details among them, then that would be much simpler, because there's not multiple copies of the same documents floating around, and also the user has the control to share the documents to whoever he chooses to. So the consortium blockchain, of course, needs a an authority, or an organization which has sufficient amount of stake to make the independent organizations come together and form the consortium, as opposed to a private or a public blockchain which can function on their own. Right. So these are the three broad categories of blockchain possible. Right. Now, if you look at the other two circles that I mentioned here, they talk about permissionless and permission. I know these are more generic and can apply to public blockchains and private blockchains as well. So, so you can do a mix and match of having a permissioned um, public blockchain or a permissionless private blockchain, depending upon the level of access, depending upon the scenario, depending upon whom can write to the blockchain, who can read from the blockchain. So those factors will decide whether you would need a permissionless private blockchain or a permissioned public blockchain, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go to the next slide, and yeah, this is exactly what I talked about. Permissioned and private would mean that so if you look at this quadrant, so there are four kind of thing. We have public and private blockchains, and then you have permission and permissionless blockchain, and each of them will tell you what kind of an access, or what kind of read access and write access are available to the participants in that network. So I'm just gonna move on to the next one, which will bring us to the focus of non-crypto use cases. So, so we kind of saw very briefly that there have been a lot of uses for the crypto-based blockchains, namely in crypto exchanges, uh, peer-to-peer payments, and a lot of industries are using crypto in one way or the other. So the question then pops up saying, so if cryptocurrency blockchain can uh, apply to the industries, then why do we need a non-crypto based blockchain? The answer is this. So consider a scenario where the focus of creating the blockchain network has nothing to do with any exchange of a crypto asset, so be it a Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of the cryptocurrencies. But if the scenario of the use case is transfer of asset, let's say it could be a simple document, it could be a land title, changing the name of the name in a land title, or if buying a car, or buying a used car. So those kind of transaction typically does not involve any kind of an exchange of cryptocurrency per se. So in those cases, having a crypto-based blockchain would have an added overhead of maintaining the cryptocurrency and spending the cryptocurrency as well, right? So to submit a transaction into a Bitcoin or an Ethereum, somebody needs to spend Ether or Bitcoin to actually submit the transaction, right? So if there is no requirement of a crypto being involved in a transaction, then it does not make sense to spend a Bitcoin or an Ethereum or any kind of a crypto just to make the transaction which does not involve any cryptocurrency. So in that case, in such scenarios, we need to have a framework which would support having a blockchain network which does not use crypto but still gives us the same flexibility and the promises of a blockchain, which is where the non-crypto blockchain platforms comes into picture. Right? So we look at what are the different non-crypto blockchain platforms are available. But before going there, I would want to spend a little bit of time to talk about how different industries are looking at adopting blockchain and not using the crypto blockchain for that. So how do we use the non-crypto blockchain to build solutions for different industries? So the first one that I would like to talk about is the supply chain. Right? In a supply chain, if you look at a supply chain network, it has a numerous amount of participants ranging from the manufacturing to the end customers, right? So there are a lot of intermediary people involved. So there are manufacturers, there are distributors, resellers, there's the transport, there's the compliance. So everybody is a part of the supply chain network. And so let me take an example to get this point home. Uh, let's say there is a manufactured good. Let's say that we have 1,000 mobile phones that I want to ship from the manufacturer to the end customer, right? Now, from the manufacturer, there's a list of phones which gets loaded onto a truck, and then that truck goes all over um, the country and keeps distributing the phones at different distributors, and then from the distributors goes to retailers, and then from the retailers goes to the end customer. In a traditional supply chain, the biggest challenge is that once the goods leave from the uh, the source, and before it reaches a destination, that's probably a black hole kind of a thing, because uh, unless the shipment reaches the destination, there is no way of actually knowing what got missed out or what got added. Right now, with technologies like IoT, those become possible by having IoT sensors attached to the shipment, and which will keep track of the data as and when the goods travel. All these IoT data are stored in a central database. And again, when you talk about a central database, the access to the central database is with a few people or an organization, and how others access it is at the discretion of those group of people. Now, consider this information if it is in the blockchain. Now we're getting all these participants like supplier, distributor, retailers, the end customer, everybody to participate in this blockchain. And whenever the goods go from one point to the other, the transaction is recorded into the blockchain. And as a virtue of the data being in the blockchain, the data is available to all the parties almost at the same time, right? So everybody gets to know what's happening and what point of time what got added or what got deleted. So the chances of counterfeit are really less. Also, the end point, the end customer or the destination person gets to know beforehand as to what is already coming his way. Right. So to that level, the process is quickened, and with the use of smart contracts, the payments can be processed faster than the regular system. And the other major use case is with regards to compliance, especially when they're transporting uh, foods like fresh foods or fish. They need to be maintained under a specific temperature and pressure, right? And when there is any kind of a fluctuation or non-compliance to that, the person who's buying the produce can deny the payment, right? But then the challenge is that until the produce reaches the end customer or the destination, they really don't know how it has been maintained throughout the journey. So using again the IoT sensors and the temperature, the pressure, all these attributes can be measured and they can be recorded in the blockchain. And any abnormalities occurring can be caught almost immediately. So that's one huge use case when it comes to compliance and tracking of assets in a supply chain. The other use case would be on a digitization. So I did talk about the records, the land records. So if I buy a house, I possess the documents related to the house, and if tomorrow I'm going to sell it, then I kind of use the same documentation, and then uh, that goes to another person, and so on and so forth, right? Uh, so at any point of time, it's always uh, there's a multiple copies of the same document available with different parties. Now, with digitization, there is uh, a single copy which is maintained in the blockchain, and each of them gets a hash, or let's say a file handle to that same file, and they can access it at any point of time using the file hash. So with this, there is no multiple copies with different people, but it's the same copy that everyone gets at the same point of time. And all transfers are recorded onto the blockchain, which makes it easier for any kind of an audit trail uh, to be performed. Right? And the other use of the digitization is the certificates, or the personal records maintenance, which can be shared with specific people, without having to maintain multiple copies, is one of the use case of digitization. Healthcare is another place where one of the use cases, patient healthcare. Um, Patient healthcare monitoring. For example, if I go to a hospital today and I want to get some tests done, and I get the test results, so pretty much the test results are stored within the hospital, and I get a copy of it. Uh, and when I go to another hospital in a different state, I probably may not be carrying my record. So if I need to access my uh, test results, I need to get in touch with the hospital, or I need to find a way where I can um, get my results from the internet or someplace. But having a solution on blockchain, where we have connected the hospitals, the patients, so any test results is available to the patient, to the doctor as well, and they can be accessed uh, by the persons whom the patient wants to share it with. So this is a typical case of a private blockchain where the data is stored in the blockchain, and the user can choose whom he wants to give access to. This is probably one of the biggest use case which is being considered in the healthcare industry. So moving on, we have the food and beverage. So food and beverage. So there are multiple use cases in food and beverage. The first one being is the way the food is prepared, the ingredients that go into it, the certification process. So let's look at something like if I need a if I need to certify a particular food item as fit for consumption. Now there are a lot of tests which are being done on that, and there's somebody who's issues and certificate. Now that certificate is mostly with the certifying authority and the food joint which is getting certified, right? So if I'm if I'm a consumer of that particular food, I would like to know if this is certified, if this is safe, where does it come from, and what is the test that has been done. So probably I would not have access to those kind of results today, but um, having a blockchain in place would probably give me a better transparency about what kind of tests were done, where it was done, what was the result, and the certificate also can be stored on the blockchain and can be accessed publicly. So moving on, so we have manufacturing in a process-oriented um, domain where there are a lot of vendors coming in who supply raw materials which gets processed and then gets converted into the end product. And there are high chances of fake components coming into the picture, and then tracing those fake components becomes a huge challenge. And also, the recalls after going to the customer also costs the companies a lot of money, right? So how do we track fake products coming into the line, and how do we minimize recall? It's probably one of the biggest use cases that blockchain kind of comes in and answers. So again, having a platform which gets all the vendors, manufacturing processes, the QA, the supplier, everybody in a blockchain makes sure that there are no unknown things that get into the network, or the unknown things that get into the process of manufacturing. Right now, once this data is available, everybody has the access to the data and can know what is happening and how the uh, particular product is being built. Right? So it reduces the amount of work involved in the recalls, and as well it kind of helps locate where the things went wrong, and actionable items in terms of taking specific actions to fix those things are much faster than the traditional system. Okay, so moving on, pharmaceutical is another area which has a lot of uses for the blockchain, and we've been seeing quite a few companies actually implementing a proof of concept. So pharmaceutical, again, there's the process of manufacturing of drugs, and similar to what we talked about in supply chain, when the drug is manufactured and they're sent across to different hospitals and drugstores, there are chances of fake drugs getting mixed with the genuine one. So how do we track that? And so again, with the help of IoT devices and sensors, and with blockchain, right? So all the data is captured, and there is a complete record of what is there in the shipment, what is going to point A, point B. So at each point, there is a record of what has been actually getting into the blockchain. Right? So by this, the amount of work that needs to be done to recognize a fake comes down drastically. Right? The minute there's something which is not supposed to be there gets caught almost instantaneously. Probably the other case I wanted to touch upon would be on insurance. So when we talk about insurance, there's a claim process which takes a huge amount of time to, from the time of submitting the claim to the time of actual money getting to the person who's claiming, because there are a lot of people who are involved, and at each point of time there has to be some kind of a manual intervention to be done, and that takes a huge amount of time. Now, So consider a platform where the insurance agent, the customer, the insurance companies, uh, the third party agents, everybody are in the same network. And the minute a claim is registered, everybody knows that there's a claim registered, and yeah, the data about the claim is again in the blockchain and people have access to it. So, and using smart contracts again, which is a part of the blockchain network, the process is automated and the whole process of the claim is reduced. And also, this can be used for um, when somebody buys an insurance, there is an insurance copy which is uploaded into the blockchain, and everybody has access to the insurance policy which is there on the blockchain. Now, there are other industries which probably have not touched upon. One such industry is the education industry, where given in university, there are a lot of books, there are a lot of journals being published, which is not known to a lot of students. And if anyone is looking for a particular journal or a particular book or a part of the book, right, then there is no way but to kind of scout around and ask people for the specific journal or book. So with blockchain, that can be resolved to a large extent by having the books or the journal um, being digitized in the blockchain and being made available to all the students. So anybody who requires a journal has to just request for that book using the file hash, and then they can just download that. Right. So that is one of the good use cases in the education industry, which probably is missed out in this slide. So, okay, there are use cases which are there. Now, how do we go about building the platforms, or how do you go about building solutions to cater to these scenarios? Right. Now, if you look at the Bitcoin, Ethereum, so they are platforms which involve cryptocurrencies, and they allow us to build solution which involve the currency to a large extent. Now, there are again other framework which are available, which will help us build solutions without the use of the cryptocurrencies. So I'm just going to take a look at a few of them. So this is not the entire list, but this is just a representative list. Of course, there are much more blockchain platform available as of today, which do very specific purposes. But however, I just wanted to highlight a few of them. So Ethereum, so as I said, Ethereum is majorly used for building decentralized applications, which has Ether as the mode of transaction. Right? However, Ethereum also allows us to build private blockchain network, and the currency would be Ether. So any transaction on the Ethereum blockchain, one would have to spend Ether to submit the transaction and to get the blocks added. But focusing on the non-crypto part of things, would the most common or the most famous would be the Hyperledger. Now, Hyperledger is an initiative which has a lot of frameworks within it. So we have Hyperledger Fabric, Hyperledger Sawtooth, Iroha, Quilt. So there are various framework available to build specific kind of blockchain solutions for specific kind of scenarios. Right, Fabric being the most contributed to at this point of time, and there's a lot of work happening around in Sawtooth as well. So the other platforms which allow to build the blockchain solutions are multi-chain. IOTA, so IOTA is a little bit, they claim to be little bit different from blockchain and more based on distributed ledger technology and focused on small nano payments. And probably one other thing which I missed out here mentioning is the Corda. Corda is primarily used by financial institutions where it's used to build consortium blockchains. And then Hydra chain is again a joint development effort which supports the creation of scalable blockchain-based applications. Right. So uh, if you look at a typical blockchain application, by the looks of it, we may not be able to, judge whether it's a web application or a blockchain application, right? Because typically the blockchain is at the is as a back end of the application. So any user who interacts with the system interact with the front end. So that front end could be an web application or a mobile application, or it could be a decentralized application. Right now these decentralized application interact with the blockchain through different APIs. So it could be REST APIs, it could be Web3, it could be different kind of APIs through which they interact. So if there is an existing solution, and so one of the questions was that I already have an existing application, so do I need to rewrite the entire application to fit in the blockchain? So the answer is no, you do not have to rewrite the entire application. So the blockchain part can be built separately, and the existing applications can be linked using the different APIs available. Right? So if you look at an architecture, what would be more important is to look at what kind of blockchain you want to build. Depends upon who can join, who all can access it, who can write to the blockchain, who can read from the blockchain. So these are some of the questions which would decide or define what kind of a blockchain network should be built. So I think with that, I'll probably open it up for some questions. So one of the question is that can we have a combination of cryptocurrency and a non-cryptocurrency platform? Yes. So let's say you want to build a document management system, and we want to incentivize people for uploading document, or you want to charge people for downloading the documents, and that needs to be a private kind of a blockchain. Yes, so we do have frameworks which support both Hyperledger as well as the Ethereum. So Hyperledger has support for an Ethereum virtual machine through which you can create custom tokens or run Ethereum-based smart contracts, which will enable the crypto linkages. Okay. So, is there any other questions? Please do type it in the box. Okay. I think there's no questions. So, I think in the interest of time, we'll close this webinar now. So, thank you so much for your time for joining this. And if you have any questions, please do send across a request on the email. Right. So, the email and the phone numbers are listed here, and so please do reach out with your queries or any questions that you may have.